Dusty, have you ever gone on a hunting trip?
Well, yeah.
You pack all your stuff. Let's say you're driving to New Hampshire. Let's say I'm driving to Ohio, and you're hunting for 4, 5, 6 days. What's the biggest challenge you usually have?
You're going to stop multiple times to get gas, and I worry about odor the whole way.
It's always in the back of your head. After talking to our friend Tim Gauthier, we realized that there's a better solution that is portable. And that solution is called the ScentLock Enforcer. This nifty little device, about the size of an iPhone, it produces ozone. Ozone is this naturally occurring O3 molecule that actually naturally removes odors, kills bacteria, binds to all kinds of odor particles in the air, and basically makes you scent-free instead of like a scent cover-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You can put this in your tote. It operates off of a USB and has an 8-hour battery life.
It's the personal ozone generator.
It is the personal ozone generator. If you want to check it out, go to ScentLockEnforcer.com. That's ScentLock Enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by ScentLock Enforcer, episode number 168. Dan Basas and the Tinemen tuned in archery, A to B hunting, and October hunting strategies. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by the ScentLock Enforcer, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Mark Stuckbauer from Stealth Step. You and I are about to listen to the only, the best, the number one podcast out there if you want to talk deer hunting. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Nick Pinizzotto, the CEO of the National Deer Alliance, and you're about to push play on my favorite show, the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
I'm Tim Gauthier with ScentLock Enforcer, and you're about ready to push play on my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name is Jay, and you know what? I'm psyched that you pushed the play button yet again. It gives me great pleasure to know that there's somebody else hanging out on the other side of this microphone, on the other side of this speaker, wanting to listen to us talk with somebody else about deer hunting. And every week, it's just an eye-opening experience. We try to bring you the best content possible. And by we, I mean me and my good friend and co-host, Dusty Phillips. How are you, Dusty?
Happy hunting, everybody. Man, I'm doing good, Jay. Really, just a pleasure to be here.
It's always a pleasure to come back, man. It's, you know, I get pumped up because I know people are push and play. I can see it on the downloads, but I can also read what people are sending in. This week, we got a letter from Norm Brown out of Alabama. It says, "Hi, Jay, man, I just found your podcast this week, and I've been listening sun up to sundown while working on my tractor. I am constantly looking for anything that can help me become a better hunter. Nothing has filled the gap like your podcast. Thank you for all you do. Good hunting from Alabama, Norm Brown." That makes me want to do the show each and every week. And one of the things that we were wondering about, we're conducting a survey of who listens to this show. And we have created a special link just for that. And if you could take 2 seconds, you did it, Dusty. I filled it out. It takes what? So I think it's 5 questions.
Yeah, it's real simple. Quick, easy. It just educates us on who's on the program here with us.
It does, and helps us understand what kind of programming we should bring, and helps us identify what kind of products we might want to bring on the show as sponsors. So if you could, check it out. It's bigbuckregistry.com/survey. bigbuckregistry.com/survey. So if you could fill that out, we'd most sincerely appreciate it. Dusty, this week's show is another darn good one, as all of them are these days. This week we're talking to Dan Basas. And Dan kind of caught my eye on Facebook because he was giving some archery pointers. And anybody that knows enough about archery to give pointers must know enough about archery to give pointers, basically. I don't see too many people who don't know anything about archery giving pointers for the most part. So I talked to Dan, and he agreed to be on the show. Turns out he's a really good deer hunter, puts in a lot of time into the woods. He has some kind of interesting ideas about when to hunt, how to hunt, and he notices that the deer pattern the hunter, not so much that the hunters pattern the deer pattern the hunters, and he plays on that, and I think it makes him a better deer hunter. So let's talk to Dan Basas, but before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the deer news.
The deer news this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. In our first story this week, outdoor retailer Bass Pro Shops is buying Cabela's for $5.5 billion. This story was originally featured on the Forbes.com website and was written by Lauren Gensler. Hunting and fishing company Bass Pro Shops is acquiring outdoor gear competitor Cabela's in an all-cash deal valued at $5.5 billion, the company said on Monday. Bass Pro Shops, which started nearly 5 decades ago when billionaire Johnny Morris started selling fishing lures out of his dad's liquor store, has agreed to pay $65.50 per share for Cabela's. This represents a 19% premium over Cabela's Friday, September 30th closing price. Cabela's had been exploring strategic alternatives for its business after coming under pressure from activist investor Paul Singer's Elliott Management, which took a position in the company a year ago and called its stock undervalued. Cabela's, which was founded in Sidney, Nebraska in 1961, has struggled in recent times and saw sales at its existing stores fall 1.3% in the first half of 2016. The company attributed this to a decrease in demand for its clothing and footwear. Under the newly combined company, Morris will continue to act as CEO and majority shareholder. Bass Pro Shops communicated its plans to retain Cabela's operations in its home state, but it's not immediately clear if jobs will still be lost or not. The deal is expected to close in the first half of 2017 and has been unanimously approved by Cabela's board of directors. It's still subject to approval by Cabela's shareholders and other closing conditions. Current card users are unaffected, the company said, and most importantly, their reward points will remain intact. Single deer in Berrien County, Michigan test positive for EHD. This article was featured on the deerfriendly.com website. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Disease Lab and the Michigan State University Diagnostic Center for Population and Animal Health today announced they have confirmed that a deer in Berrien County has died from EHD. Deer deaths from EHD in Michigan have occurred sporadically since 2006. Prior to 2006, EHD outbreaks in Michigan occurred in 1955 and 1974. The estimated mortality has varied from 50 to 1,000 deer per year in the affected isolated areas. In 2012, the largest die-off occurred with an estimated loss of over 12,000 deer. No cases of EHD were confirmed in the state in either 2014 or 2015. Due to the prolonged, dry, hot weather this year, we are not surprised to see EHD emerge, said Tom Cooley, DNR wildlife biologist and pathologist. Since the 2012 outbreak, DNR Wildlife Division staff members and collaborators at Michigan State University have been conducting research to assess the extent and impact of losses in the affected areas and to measure how fast population recovery occurs. Property owners or recreationists who discover dead deer should report it to the DNR's Diseased Wildlife Reporting Database or call the closest DNR customer service center. To dispose of deer that die from EHD is acceptable to allow natural decomposition to occur. Just remove the dead deer from the water source. Natural decomposition will not spread the disease or cause the other disease outbreaks. Property owners are responsible for properly disposing of carcasses that they wish to remove from the site or burying carcasses deep enough so no body parts are showing. Carcasses also can be disposed of in landfills that accept household solid waste. For more information on EHD, visit mi.gov/wildlife disease. First black bear seen in Kentucky in almost a century. This story was originally reported on the Outdoor.com website. Bernheim Arboretum and Research Forests recently discovered they have a new resident in their woods. A Kentucky black bear made its presence known on a couple of trail cameras that had been set up in Bernheim Forest. Photos of the black bear were discovered on a trail camera in 2 different locations during the past 2 months in Bernheim Forest near Louisville, Kentucky. This comes as quite a surprise because black bear populations in this part of the country had been significantly reduced due to habitat loss. In fact, historical accounts indicated bears were essentially eliminated in the early 1900s. Because the bear has apparently decided to stick around, Bernheim is asking for help in naming their new family member. You can visit their website and vote between 3 different names: Bernie, Ranger, or Wilson. Here's how lucky you are to crash into a deer based on where you live. This article was originally featured on the Washington Post website and was written by Karen Brouillard. State Farm Insurance, in its annual effort to urge people not to smash into deer, recently used its claim data to come up with rankings for where such a collision is likely to happen. The most perilous state is West Virginia, whose drivers have a 1 in 41 chance of hitting a deer. Rounding up the top 5 where you are likely to hit a deer are West Virginia at 1 in 41, Montana at 1 in 58, Pennsylvania in 1 in 67, Iowa at 1 in 68. South Dakota is number 5 at 1 in 70. The state where you are least likely to hit a deer is Hawaii at 1 in 18,955. For links to this story, including a map showing your chances of hitting a deer in all 50 states, as well as links to the other stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Dan Basas.
Dan Bayus, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening, my friend?
Hanging in there, buddy. How you doing today?
You're living the dream, man. It's, tell you what, it's deer season. All that humidity that was making me drip is gone.
I'm with you there, brother.
And it just makes me want to get out in the woods. What could be wrong with that? It's just
nothing.
I know, exactly. That's exactly.
Yep. I'm chomping at the bit, man. This cooler weather has definitely got us all feeling a certain kind of way, I think. And, everybody's got their trail cameras running. The velvet's starting to come off the bucks. It's here, man. I'm ready to go.
Yes, sir. It's like, how do we have that sense? It's like a sixth sense. Like you walk out of your front door and you just have this moment, and it's like a flashback almost. Like you just know what time of year it is. You could close your eyes and have that smell and that feel, and it just brings back these memories of being in the stand or tracking a deer or working through the shadows in the Northeast. It's just all these great memories that come back. And I think it's smell related, actually. I think it's the smell.
It is. I'm telling you, smell and feel, you hit it right on the head.
Right. Anyways, that time of year, and everybody listening to the show, I'm sure, is starting to feel the same way across the country. So, Dan, tell us about yourself. I'm interested to hear more about who you are and where you're at and where you grew up and what kind of trouble you got in as a kid.
I got in a lot of trouble, but we won't start there. So, who I am, well, I guess I'm no different than anybody else. I'm a dreamer. I guess where I differ from some is I'm a doer. A very wise man, a mentor of mine when I was younger, working, he one time told me, "Don't tell me, show me." And, I took that to heart. And, I don't try to tell people I want to be this or I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I guess I'm a big dreamer, and I try to be a big doer. I feel like if I shoot for something that is way beyond my, what I'm actually capable of doing, I can achieve some greatness, even if I do fall short. So that's kind of one of my outlooks on life. I got started hunting very young. I had a cousin who I looked up to a great deal, my uncle. They were, I think everybody kind of started out that way. They're someone you looked up to, and I think every man has a something in them where they have to prove themselves. So whether it be your father, your uncle, your grandfather, or so on and so forth. And I'm no different than anyone else with that. It made me happy to make people proud. And we talked earlier about how you were saying you wanted me to give you a story. Well, I'm not going to give you the story just yet, but one of my most memorable hunts was basically my uncle had set me up in a tree stand, and in Ohio here, we're able to bake. He had that thing. I mean, it smelled like an apple, an applesauce station or a mill. And
Sure.
I got in there, and I didn't really shoot too much when I was younger. I just got it was actually my second compound bow. And got up in the tree, and I actually hit a grunt call, and really good, nice 10-point came in, and that's where it all started. I started off my bow hunting career with a good Ohio 10-point, and word went around the neighborhood, then it went around town, and that sense of making everybody proud. My grandmother, my grandfather, that means a lot to me. And I think that's something that, like I said, is in every man and every kid and every boy, is to make people proud, and that's how I kind of got my start, was wanting to always do bigger and better. So.
Gotcha. Where do you call home?
I moved this past weekend. I'm now living in Lake City, Pennsylvania.
Lake City, Pennsylvania. All right. So, and where did you come from?
I was living in Brookfield, Ohio for a lot of years, man. I grew up there. It's northeast Ohio. Not known as the big buck capital of the world, but it is one of the, I was very fortunate to grow up with some very large world-class, whitetails right in my backyard. So Brookfield, Ohio is where I grew up, and I recently actually just got married this past weekend, and
wow.
I moved to somewhat better, our situation with she's a school teacher, and she was not gonna. My job is to tune bows, work on bows, create video, ship my products, hang on helpers all over the place, and I can do that from anywhere. So I moved here to better, her situation with the schooling.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's interesting because Ohio is known for their deer. I mean, just monster deer, and probably you've seen quite your number over the years. And Pennsylvania is known for its numbers of deers. I wouldn't say they're known for their record deer, but there are definitely lots of deer to hunt.
Yes, sir. Say, Pennsylvania is it's a lot of heritage, and there's a lot of the hunting camp, and the weekend before rifle season. I feel like there's a lot more involved with Pennsylvania. I enjoy hunting Pennsylvania a lot because every time you go out, basically you're gonna see deer. And it never has been known as a big buck state. However, I've got quite a few on the wall now from PA, and I'm not going to tell you what woods I'm hunting this deer in, but I believe he might be at least in the top 10, maybe top 5 archery harvests for typical. And that does come with a lot of work. I mean, I spend a lot of time planting food plots and making sure the deer have what they need out there to become that. But where that woods used to be a basket rack, was a trophy place. I think if you give a deer everything they need, they can reach their max potential. And now they're also being coupled with age. I feel, but they have a 4-point on one side restriction. It's an antler restriction, and it's really worked numbers for Pennsylvania. So I feel that's a very, very large contributing factor there.
It's interesting that you say that, and this is a whole interesting topic, really, in and of itself. Moving, period, is not fun.
No.
Moving your stuff and all the crap that you've accumulated over your lifetime to another location is nothing short of miserable, really.
That's the truth.
Right? It's
Yes,
one
sir.
of the worst experiences humans can know.
Uh-huh.
So you've moved from Ohio to Pennsylvania. And the moving part, that's a different show. We don't need to talk about the moving part.
Right.
But what I'm interested to find out is, how did you go about getting familiar with the territory to a spot you moved to? Maybe you had some familiarity with it. Maybe you've hunted it before. But how did you get in contact with this area? And it sounds like you're ready to hunt with food plots and all that stuff, and you just got married and you just moved. So tell us about how that all developed.
Well, Jay, I've lived on the Ohio. Brookfield is where I grew up in Ohio. That is about 20 minutes from the Pennsylvania line.
Okay.
So I've been blessed with being able to hunt both states, and maybe drive an hour, a couple hours to be in one or the other state. And so now that I'm actually, it would be the northwest side of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I'll be able to just take a hop, skip, and a jump right to Ohio as well. So
that's nice.
Yeah. As far as what I do, I feel wholeheartedly about this. This is something I'm very adamant about. I do feel confident that I can go on almost any property. This is not, I don't want anybody to take this wrongly. I don't feel I'm big-headed in this. And when you can be real with yourself and understand your strengths and qualities, you can capitalize on those or make your weaknesses stronger. But I do feel I'm very capable of looking at aerial views on a map and deciding, okay, well, you know what? It's pretty simple, Jay. Basically, if you're looking at a deer from A to B, okay, you know that this might be his bedding area, A, okay, and B. I don't want to shoot him on A or B. I want to find his A to B and intercept it. So how am I going to get him from that A to B? And, I feel like when you look at it like that, it helps you break it down a lot more. And then you can say, maybe find a pinch point or so on and so forth, or, where can I create what I would call like a staging area, food source. And that's generally where I'll try and either do, say, a pocket plot. And that's where it all happens. Those deer feel safe and whether it be, that they're in there for that food source or they're in there for a doe that's on that food source, that's generally where, a great place to make those harvests is at.
What are you looking for as a new hunter into a new, or an experienced hunter into a new spot? What are you looking for?
Well, people. I know that's going to sound crazy, but
no, not necessarily. That sounds kind of smart to me, actually.
Yeah, I honestly, I hunt people more than I hunt the deer. And as a matter of fact, I just picked up a new lease in Ohio. It's not a very large tract of land. It's a lot of farmland. However, there's some pretty good bedding on it. And there, it's in what I would call big buck heaven. There are some big deer in there, and there's, guys that lease the property to the left, behind, and the right. But it gets hunted hard. So one of my tactics I'm going to be going in there with is basically hunting midday. If you look at look at a buck's life, okay, when he's out there every single day, 365, 24 hours a day, he's able to hear certain things that we don't know of, or whether it be traffic on the road. He can, maybe I'm a little extreme with this, but I do believe that they know the difference between a weekend day and a weekday. I notice, I run cameras like crazy, and I feel like there's a difference between running them effectively and running trail cameras also. Big difference there. But so I'll notice that I have more pictures of big deer, shooter deer during the week, whether it be mostly nocturnal. Obviously, they're nocturnal animals, but those daylight movers, you'd be surprised. It seems like after the rut, it's really tough to really tell when they're gonna daylight walk. And that's what I'm really interested in, because that's a killable deer. And if they're not killable, they don't really mean too much to me other than the fact that they're in the area. So, those midday movers though are the ones that in those high traffic areas from other hunters, I rely on those guys to be sloppy, getting in and out of the woods in the morning or evening or whatever it might be. And I'll be doing a lot of midday sits on that new property that I just, came across. And I do feel that those big 6-year-olds, 5, 6, 7-year-old bucks are the ones that, everybody wants them, but, midday sits are very few sightings, but the ones that you do see, buddy, are something special most often.
Right. Now, how do you decide if it's a midday mover? Do you use cameras, or do you just have this hunch that based off the number of people that are hunting the area, based off of your observation, that's when you move in? How do you decide?
That's basically based off of knowing what, as far as the foot traffic from humans in the area. I went down there, not too long ago actually, and I just, you ever, when you see the presence of humans, whether it be 4-wheeler tracks, foot track, chainsaws or so on and so forth. Those deer, they become accustomed to that human movement. And I feel that they somewhat pattern those people that are, I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but I call them, sloppy hunters it's easy to pattern them. If you can pattern them humans and hunt the exact opposite times of when they're doing it, which is most oftentimes either mornings when it's nice outside or, evenings, every weekend, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Those are the guys that I'll try to anyways, and I will hunt the exact opposite of them, which sometimes does mean, like I said, sitting midday or, in the rain or what have you. But those times seem to be the best to capitalize.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating subject matter, actually, and I've had this exact discussion with my neighbor, and my neighbor is a bow technician over at the local sporting goods store, and he's a great deer hunter, and he's one of those tracker guys that goes up north in New Hampshire to find snow to track down the big New Hampshire whitetail bucks.
Is that right?
But one of the things that we have noticed, and the things that I have noticed over the years, is that and I live near old snowmobile trails, which were once train tracks, now turned into snowmobile and ATV trails. So it attracts people from out of state.
Yep.
And if I'm hunting in an area around my house, I have 100% identified that if there are heavy engine movements anywhere on the trails from these high-speed, high-jumping ATVs, that there is not a chance that I will see a deer on its feet during the day.
Is that right?
Yep. However, midweek on a Monday through Friday, when you won't find a single ATV anywhere screeching down the trail, guaranteed they know what day of the week it is, as you described.
It's crazy, man. I mean, they do. They're out there all the time. They know the sounds. They know the smells. They know. Let's associate just school buses, for example. Okay, during hunting season, school's in session. Well, if you're sitting out there in the woods during the morning, I mean, you can tell. You hear a bus, whether it's the brakes screeching to come to a stop or the horn blowing or whatever it might be.
Right.
You can. And I feel like the deer somewhat listen to that. I know that, more traffic during the week than on the weekends. And I do feel confident that those deer do know the difference. And you know what? It might be associated with smell as well. I feel confident that, I hunt certain woods or certain stands that I know I might be kind of boogering the deer that are on the neighbor's property, but I'm not so much worried about them. When I'm going in, I'm worried about I'm not going in to hunt, deer in general. I'm going in usually to harvest one deer that I either have patterned or that I have in mind. Maybe a bonus deer does walk by, but generally I'm going in after one specific deer and almost like a Navy SEAL almost of, a tree ninja, man, a woods ninja, go out there and I'm going after one deer.
How do you decide what that one deer is?
Well, Jay, everybody wants to shoot a booner or a big 5-year-old or 6-year-old. But, at the end of the day, man, I shot the two smallest bucks, actually. My first buck I ever shot was a small 10-point. He had probably the best genetics. He would have been a booner, no doubt, here in Ohio. But last year I shot a 6-point in Ohio he had been running deer off my properties. He's very old, just a brute, and he actually had an injury. I crawled right up to him and, not right up to him, but, I crawled up to him. I did a spot and stalk and, I shot him and I don't want to say it was what do they call a management deer, nothing of that sort. Cause, I'm just as happy with him as my biggest deer on the wall. Believe me, on the video, the video actually I think it's airing on Hunt Channel. When you see that video, you'll see me come unglued and I don't necessarily, I do have one deer in general. Most of the times I'm going into hunt, but I'm not the type that's gonna, allow a good thing walk by me too often. I got an itchy trigger finger. I'm not that choosy. Let's put it like that. I've seen guys pass up deer that are just like, oh my gosh, what are you thinking?
Right. All right. So you don't get too picky in the woods, yet they're usually a worthy buck in the area that you're pursuing.
I got a target deer, yeah, almost every time.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. So let's talk about your setup a little bit. How do you prepare yourself for the woods? Once you've identified a deer in an area that you know you're going to hunt, how do you prepare yourself to enter into those body of woods?
Well, that's one of the biggest things I look at on a topo map, man. That's the most important thing, is getting in and out of the woods. I don't even set my trail cameras in places that's hard to get to, because I don't hunt those spots. I might have, say, a great pinch point or a great funnel that's way back in a big woods, but it's inaccessible without bumping deer. I mean, that can be detrimental to an area. I'm sure that you can second this when you say walk in or out. Let's use the morning, for example. Okay, you're walking in, you don't know where these deer are. It's too unpredictable. So, morning sits are kind of off limits for me until, say, late October, early November. But so say you have one in the morning, or you're walking out in the evening, you bump a doe, or even who knows what buck it might have been. But you've alerted the woods, and so have they, by blowing or stomping or so on and so forth. Can you second that possibly it seems like the deer are a little bit more weary, or they have different body language and are a little bit more tense? I mean, that seems pretty, yeah. And I feel like, your entry and exits are without a doubt. You know what? That comes from a lot of watching Drury's and Bill Wink. That was something they kind of turned me on to a lot of years back. And, I didn't really take it so much as watching them guys. I felt more like as if I were learning. And a lot of people, are want to watch big deer getting killed and so on and so forth. I'm the type, I love listening to something informative, somebody that's trying to help me get better, because, everybody has a different way of doing it. Nobody's right. Bill's not right. I'm not right now. But I'm basically elaborating on things that have worked for me, and that's no different than watching, the Drury's. I feel like they have one of the best informative shows, is because, they are very willing to give you their knowledge, where I think a lot of people might fall short with them guys, is that they aren't necessarily hunting the big tracts of lands that they are. And that's something that, I'm trying to encapsulate through Tinemen is, I'm hunting no different woods. Anybody can go ask for permission on these woods. Most of them I don't even pay for, as far as a lease goes. And I feel like, that's something, the everyday viewer or listener to this podcast, that's something they all can really relate to is as a matter of fact, my biggest deer I ever killed was on a 5-acre tract of land.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So other than entry and exit points, what do you do? Are you like one of those scent nuts? Like, do you go and bathe and take the chlorophyll tabs and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you know what? I do go through the motions with that. I used to be extremely a nutball with that, but here's the deal. I was doing basically anything and everything you could ever think to do. But what I was finding is I also let my hunting the wind, I let that kind of go to the wayside, and I feel like I was really ruining my properties at that point in time. I went back to the old way of never hunting a stand unless it is the ideal perfect wind. And I feel like my sightings might have went down for that as well. Now here's something that might kind of be tough to understand or kind of blow some people's minds, but I'll hunt those winds that are very close to being bad. And I will make sure that my scent game is extremely tight. I do use, I use upwind odor eliminator. I feel confident that stuff is money. I've actually had some, big snooty does come from downwind. I've had, good bucks. I can't say I've never, I'm not a liar. God made me an honest man, and I promised my father I would be since the time I was a kid. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I had no giant buck come up and I killed him, right downwind of me. But I have had, quite a few deer that haven't detected me from downwind, but generally my biggest thing I try to do is I will hunt safe winds, and it's just it's 100% fact that a deer will not detect you or know that you are there if the wind is correct.
Okay.
There's too many variables that come into play when the wind is close.
Gotcha.
Or dead wrong.
Are you always hunting tree stands? Okay.
No, sir. I actually I've gotten 3 bucks spot and stalk in Ohio.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, during the rut, and I guess in certain places or certain scenarios, I am not scared whatsoever to get down on the ground and go up after a deer. Now, you got to be weary and real, mindful of your surroundings, because oftentimes them bucks aren't sitting out there by themselves. If they're in the middle of say a hayfield or a big swamp, have you?
Yep.
They generally have a doe that they're out there tending or out there bedded with. So I'm not afraid to get on the ground and go after deer, and I do hunt out of a blind as well. In certain scenarios, I'd rather hunt the right spot with everybody wants to hunt out of a stand, and I'm no different there either, man. I like to be able to see what's going on and see them coming for a while. I mean, it does really restrict you when you're hunting out of a blind, but it also, I'd much rather be in the right spot. Let's just say for a food plot, for example. Okay, well, deer may enter a food plot coming from A to B, basically, and they're not going to go out and around you. For most oftentimes, it's an A to B, and say a tree that you think is perfect for a tree stand is in. Well, that it might be crossing your wind to get through there, and I don't feel like that's ideal. So I'll throw a blind up and make sure I brush it in real good, and way ahead of season, obviously. But yeah, I don't really care for the blind hunting, because it does get you feel like you're just. I don't like that feeling of being closed in.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but I do hunt out of a blind often, especially late season as well.
Gotcha. All right. Tell me about your food plot setup. Sounds like you're using some of them in your strategies. What do you do? What's your when do you start planting? What are you planting in the ground? Is it all year round that you're maintaining these crops? What's your strategy with the food plots?
Well, I'm restricted with what I'm capable of planting. I honestly, I have a walk-behind tiller. I have sometimes we borrow tractors or bobcats with the tiller attachment that you can rent from a rental place. I don't got big bucks to spend on. I don't own my own tractor. I don't own my own equipment. So I would say, if I really had my choice, I'd plant beans and keep those, perfect all year round, or up to season.
Yeah.
But I've been using a alfalfa clover mix in Ohio, and I feel like the deer absolutely love that. For some reason, it just seems to be, I'll let half of it grow and I'll keep half of it cut. Say like midsummer, I'll stop cutting half of that food plot, and it might be, half an acre. So a quarter of an acre of it just creates, it's almost like tonnage of food. And they don't eat that very often. It's when the snow starts falling. The beans are already brown, and obviously they're not touching them right now or right then. And, they'll hit that high stuff once the snow starts falling. It covers over this stuff I have cut low, like almost like a yard. But they'll eat that low stuff, the alfalfa clover mix, when almost instantly after I cut it. It becomes very, very attractive to them because it's new growth. Deer do like new growth. It seems as if, anyways. And that's my Ohio tactic. In PA, we don't get up to our PA property enough to really, where I have food plots in the one PA property, we don't get up there enough to really tend and keep brush hogged or cut down, something like, say, a clover plot, and it gets overtaken by weeds. So what I'll do there is I'll go up and, say, spray weed killer as soon as the snow comes off, or in the springtime, going up there if we want a turkey hunt or so on and so forth. And make sure everything is dead. Well, then midsummer, go up there, respray it one more time, and then fall time, just go up there and till it up. And up there, I mean, it seems like it doesn't matter what you plant for those deer. They're on it hardcore, because there's at least the one area that I'm hunting there's very little agriculture, very, very little agriculture. So I did plant this year. I tried some rape brassicas, turnips, and obviously threw clover in there too. So hopefully in the springtime something comes up with that.
Right.
We'll see.
Gotcha. Are you planting anything now or in August?
I did all my fall food plots, in PA and Ohio. Actually would have been early August. I tried to get them in early this year because we had a lot of rain coming, and it seemed to work out pretty perfect. Soil quality in PA wasn't the greatest this year, it never is, but I didn't get enough lime fertilizer on it, I'm guessing. It didn't come up the greatest, but it is green, and they are mowing it down. It just don't seem that they can keep up with the browse.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Are you doing any gun hunting, or are you a bow guy?
Well, I wouldn't call myself a bow guy. I own a bow shop. I try to do it with the bow, of course. But I took a couple years off of gun hunting. And it's just because more, I guess, a moral thing. I felt like, it's the new way of doing it is I'm a bow hunter. Well, you know what? I went out last year gun hunting with my family, the old way, with deer drives, and I actually left the camera at home. And I'm not going to lie to you, man, it was probably one of my best times hunting in a very long time. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think that's something I'm going to be trying to do every year is get together with the family. That's the way my grandfather had passed away last year, and that's the way that he used to raise us hunting, was doing the deer drives, getting your family all together, and it was basically our hunting camp was his shop, and it was really nice to get back out and do it that way. I'm not opposed to gun hunting at all, and I do have, I've been pretty successful in Pennsylvania with my gun as well. I shoot a 300 Winchester short mag, and boy, that thing, it kicks like a mule, but it also puts them deer down, boy.
Sometimes those kickers are the good killers too. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So you do pick up a gun now and then, but you also hunt a lot with a bow.
Yeah.
And you own your own bow shop.
Yes.
Tell me about picking up a brand new bow for the first time. I mean, it always seems like, I don't know, end of August where people start buying your bows because bow season's right around the corner.
Yeah.
If you're not shooting a bow that you're familiar with, what are some of the things that you advise people to do picking up a brand new bow off the shelf? Walk me through some of the things that you go through when you're buying a bow and when you're talking to somebody about buying a new bow.
Well, I guess, everybody has a different preference. Everybody has a different feel or something they like or what appeals to them. Myself personally, I really like a very solid back wall because I am not only a hunter, I also like to shoot target. So I feel confident in saying that a bow with a solid back wall is a very, very contributing factor to being able to hold that bow back if that buck doesn't walk right down your trail or, you draw early on them. And as well, when you're shooting, say, a long-range shot, that's something I've kind of somewhat made a little bit of a stir with is my long-range shots. I feel confident when you can really relax and hyper-focus on one point on that target and not worry about your bow trying to jump out of your hands, you can achieve a perfect shot. So, back wall is real important to me. A smooth draw. They have what's called the speed bows with a heavy brake cam. It's a very aggressive cam, and I used to be on that kick a little bit with the speed, but the truth is, speed doesn't kill its accuracy. And I'd rather have a smooth draw bow that doesn't make any noise on the draw stops, at the back wall. And that's very good for deer hunting as far as I'm concerned. You don't want to be struggling and have a heavy break and, a deer. I've drawn bows actually where, I was out, say, sitting in a tree stand and draw the bow and deer looks right up at you like, what the heck, man? I knew I was being quiet. Well, that's your bow, it's just a loud, clunky bow. Well, that's kind of the things that I look for. I just started shooting these primes. I shot them a little bit last year, and I've been shooting the heck out of them this year. And I'll tell you what I really, really love about those is that they're perfectly balanced. When you're at full draw, they put levels in sights for a reason, and basically it allows you to do the same exact thing every single time. If you have the bow cantered one way or the other, it will create variance in your shot. Well, I feel that those dual cam bows that Prime makes, it helps you to hold your bow steady if you're shooting a perfect grip 45 degree, and it also promotes good shooting. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, very much
so.
So.
Yeah, accuracy is my biggest thing I'm looking for.
Tell us,
shootable.
How do you practice? You just talked about the long shot. You're kind of known for your long shot and your hyper focus on the target. What goes through your head? What are you looking at? What's it look like through your eyes when you're trying to focus on that shot?
I've been told I have hawk vision, and I don't know one way or another. I do feel like, there's times that I guess when you're, say, maybe out in the woods with a buddy and say, do you see that? And they're like, what are you talking? What are you talking about? Well, I do feel that I am capable of seeing very, very good. As far as practice goes, to be honest with you, I shoot so many customers' bows. I've not even shot my bow for probably my personal bow for maybe a good month now, and that was only just to kind of throw a few down range when I did that. And I actually have it's a pretty big shoot. There's a competition this weekend down in PA. It's actually close to Pittsburgh, PA. It's for Arrows for Heroes, it's called. And they have prize shots where if you shoot through a metal plate target, you can win. I can't remember what it is, to be honest with you, but there's prizes, and you better believe I'll be wasting arrows on that. And long range shots and so on and so forth. And I'll tell you, I've not shot my bow yet, and it's Wednesday. I got a few days, but I do feel confident that I shoot so many other people's bows, and when you can concrete anchor points and doing, if you think of yourself as a machine, okay, and if you can do the same exact thing every single time, no matter what, okay, same exact back anchor point, same exact. I put a kisser button on my bow. People call them training wheels, but guess what? I'll put training wheels on my bike any day if it makes me ride further than you. And right. I feel confident that I learned from actually one of our United States Olympic coaches, Alexander Krylov. That's who I went and was certified for shooting through, and also instructing and as a bow technician. And the guy, I went down there basically for a piece of paper. I felt like with my bow shop, people would really respect seeing a certification. Well, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really learn nothing as far as the bow teching goes. It was a pretty lax course. It wasn't very in-depth or anything of that sort, nothing I didn't know already. I'd been doing it for years. Well, okay. I'd also been shooting for 20 years, but had I known, that I was doing it wrong for that 20 years, I feel like, I could have probably went and been an Olympic archer.
All right. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was the toughest thing for me was, 20 years I'd been shooting and I thought I was shooting good and so on and so forth. Well, I said, hey, you know what? You paid money to be here. You might as well let your guard down a little bit and let the guy teach you. Try it. What do you have to lose? Right. And I'll tell you, he changed my entire form up. Actually changed my draw length down a half inch, and it's been night and day since. I mean, I can't stress enough. Draw length on a bow is probably the most important thing from the very get-go. Don't ever walk into a bow shop and allow somebody to tell you, oh, well, or if you you're, say, a 28-inch draw length, they have a 29 on shelf. Well, guess what? A bow salesman doesn't make any money by changing out those modules to make that bow a 28-inch draw length. They make that sale because they make that money, and really, I consider that a careless bow shop. I consider that very, and that's kind of what got me started doing the bow teching. Is that I was buying these $1,200-$1,500 bows, and I wasn't shooting great. I wanted to know, why is this bow why can't I shoot good? Is it me? Is it the bow? And I had no idea. Right. So, I was inspired to really learn, well, what makes a bow fly true? What makes it fly good? And that's how I started, I guess, learning how to tune bows and how to work on bows. And that kind of is what inspired me, was the same guys I was upset with, some years back when I, started learning, are the same people I have to thank today for, pushing me in the direction I'm in.
What is it that you learned specifically about those little nuances that you have to pay attention to? You mentioned draw length. You mentioned hyperfocus. What are some of the points that goes through your head when you're lining up each and every shot? Do you have like these checklists that you go through as you decide to, maybe it's the draw, it's the anchor point. What are you going through your head? What's going through your head as you develop your shot?
To be honest with you, Jay, I did used to go through basically a checklist. It was back anchor point, nose to string, front hand 45 degree, really focus on target, breathe out, don't pull the trigger, pull your arm back into the trigger. I create a hook basically I shoot a wrist release. I feel, it's important if you're a bow hunter to always have your, basically it's your trigger, right? Well, right. I don't like the idea of it not being attached to my body or something that is, that's just my own personal preference. Everybody's different with that. But I used to go through a checklist in my mind before every single shot. And when you make it second nature and you've done it for so long, that way, it does become second nature. And I feel like it also will help you to, say, make a good shot. I mean, as well as I do, when you're sitting down in a tree stand, and aiming down at say a deer that's 20 feet below you, at 5 yards, your anchor points are going to be a little bit different than if you are standing up shooting at a target that's 10 yards right in front of you on the ground, right? So, if it's second nature for you and you go off of feel and concrete those anchor points into your brain, I feel, that you're basically creating a recipe for success, and whether you stick to that recipe or not is up to you, when in a moment of truth. But the more you become acquainted with that feel and that knowing that you're concrete, it's almost like a light bulb goes off in your head. When you feel that, I feel like your second nature is it's going to help you to produce a better shot.
Okay. What would you say to that person that is seeking what you were seeking? Why am I buying these expensive bows, but I can't shoot great? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, Jay, that all comes down to, honestly, it's who set the bow up.
Okay.
And I'm not going to down anybody at all because, everybody has their way of doing stuff. But, there's certain people who don't see better than others, certain people who are capable of doing, one thing better than another. But at the end of the day, lasers and levels are 100%, right? There's no variance in those. They are 100% accurate. So if you have a bow tech that is, say, putting a rest on a bow, and really, that's where the heart of the bow is. It's all in the rest. You can slap any sight on a bow and you can shoot great with it. But if you have a rest that is working in conjunction with that bow, and say the bow's timing is perfected, no cam lean whatsoever on the bow, everything is in time as far as the cam goes, okay? And then you throw a really good rest on there. It is 100% center shot, level as far as your up and down. And how I tune a bow is actually I'll bare shaft it. And this is basically a concept that came from recurves and longbows. Now, you're the first person I'm really giving this out to, and I guess a public thing. But I've gotten known across the U.S. I get bows shipped from everywhere, and it's because I've perfected the bear shaft tune. And the way that basically the whole concept in my mind where it came from is I started shooting recurves and longbows. Well, the only way to tune a recurve or a longbow is through having the perfect arrow for that bow. Every bow they manufacture is different, and compounds are really no exception to that. They might be very, very close and similar. However, everybody's draw lengths and poundage that they're shooting is different. So I do feel confident that's what spine of arrow is. I don't believe a lot of people know, like say a 350 or 400. That's not the weight of the arrow. That's the actual spine. That's the flex in the arrow.
Right.
So, say a 400 spined arrow cut at 27 inches is going to fly a heck of a lot different than the same exact arrow cut at 29 inches. At 2 inches of shaft is actually going to really vary the flight on that arrow. And so that is, that's where I get into the nitty gritty with the bear shaft tuning and kind of how I've made my name for the bow shop tuned in archery.
Gotcha. Very fascinating. There's so much that goes into that. And I mean, it probably takes years of practice. What was one of the first things that the Olympic coach told you when you let down your guard and you said, okay, I'm going to try and learn something from this guy? What was the first thing he told you?
Well, he was carrying around an arrow, actually. And if you're holding it from, say, the point and you smack that thing against your leg, smack the veins against your leg, tell me how bad that hurts. And he was walking around with that thing, and every time I draw my bow, I used to put it was, I believe, my pointer finger right underneath my earlobe. Well, he'd smack me every single time. He said, no, hold on. Like, why don't pay attention in class and what's going on with you? Well, I told him, like, listen, man, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention before. I'm open. I want to know, what am I doing wrong? Quit smacking me in the leg with the arrow. And that's the first thing that he corrected with me was my anchor points. And like I had said, we found my draw length was actually a half inch too long and shortened me up, and I was able to hit everything money every single time, man.
Do you think that's a general problem? Is that we have draw lengths that are too long?
100%. Yeah, that's I'd say there's probably 60-70% of the customers that come through the shop. I'll ask them what their draw length is, and I'll actually measure them, and I'll have them draw their bows before and say fix that for them. And if you want the truth here, it may decrease if you go down in draw length. It may decrease your arrows feet per second by, say, maybe anywhere from 10 to 5. Okay, well, that's not a big issue to me. If you're able to shoot accurately, I personally would rather shoot a 35-pound bow at 28-inch draw length than a 80-pound bow at a 35-inch or 32-inch draw length, because I'm not going to be able to shoot that 32-inch bow properly and accurately. There's way too many things. There's no constant. There's no consistency in that. If you're not able to hit them anchor points, then you're never going to shoot accurately, and accuracy is what kills.
Very, very interesting. It's crazy. Let's move on to one of your most memorable deer hunts. And you've been on a lot of them. You kill a lot of deer every year, or you could, I should say.
Yeah.
And you've killed some beautiful bucks over the years. And thank God for Facebook, because we can eavesdrop and see what you've done over your lifetime.
Yeah.
So I know, and this is how I find a lot of the guests for the show, is I snoop on Facebook. I see who's killing big deer and who's the real deal and seems to be authentic and knows what they're doing, and who's not. And
I appreciate that.
That's how I figure this stuff out.
Yep.
See, we're telling secrets today. That's one of my secrets. That's how I figure it out. And what? So you've been on a bunch of deer hunts, and I ask you to kind of think of one memorable deer hunt. And I want you to go on a play-by-play with us and tell us every little step you took along the way to kill this big deer. Where are we going to go?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll probably go back to. I'm going to have to go back to a very big 8-point, 159 and 5/8 8-point. And, that's probably one of my most memorable hunts. It was my first very successful, I should say, bucks on film. And, I shared that with my cousin who I'd been hunting with since I was a young kid. And that's probably still to date my most memorable hunt. And it's all over the internet. Anybody can watch that hunt. But it was kind of what jump-started my career with everything I'm doing. I got a lot going on in the outdoor industry. And I feel like that was by far the most memorable. How I feel I made that possible is obviously, cameras are the most technological, advancement in the industry that we have ever seen. And I still feel confident that there's nothing that rivals with, how effective trail cameras are. If you learn how to run those effectively, and every single, sometimes you go out there, there's 5,000 pictures on the camera. Well, guess what? I'm looking at every single one of those 5,000 camera pictures and figuring out, well, what time of day is that buck coming through there? Why is he coming through there? What side of the camera is he coming from? Well, in the evenings, if the buck is coming from a certain side, it means that he's most likely bedding over that way, or, from the left side or right side of the camera, so on and so forth. So, I patterned that buck pretty well. I really knew he was using the area. And my cousin, we had we just got done hunting in Pennsylvania, and I had to go to Illinois to film one of my guys. We had 2 days to get it done, and it was November 7th, beautiful overcast morning. It was actually terrible. It was freezing cold, but that's beautiful for us deer hunters. And sure enough, man, we were sitting out there, just deer movement like crazy coming through, and young bucks, does, kind of getting a little bit later in the morning, like say 8 o'clock, 8:30ish, and started letting my guard down a little bit, and things had slowed down some, and all of a sudden my cousin tapped my shoulder and said, "Oh, Dan, big buck running through the bedding area." So I didn't know which one it was. At that time, we were actually hunting either that 8-point or it was a 7x7 giant monster booner. And it was between those two who I was going to shoot, or, who I was hoping to shoot, I should say. And that 8-point is who had ran through, man, and hit that grunt call, boy, and he come just bristled up stiff-legged. And, it was obviously November 7th, hardcore rut. And he had come exactly straight to us, and it felt like it took an eternity. And, he probably, from the time that we seen him, he turned to come to us. It was he closed probably about 100 yards. And he actually come to directly downwind of me at about like 7 yards. And I hadn't had my bow drawn yet because I was not able to get a shot right there. He kind of came where I wasn't expecting, so I didn't have any lanes trimmed right there. And he caught my wind, and he actually turned to go, and I drew that bow real quick and let it fly. And I hit him. I did double lung him, but it was a little bit far back, and boy, was I was sick. I didn't know what to do, or that's one of the worst feelings when that's the biggest deer of your life. You think, oh my gosh, man, I think I just screwed it up.
Right.
And we didn't watch him drop. So, we went back, watched video of it, and verified that it was a good shot. Actually had some pizza, and we went back out after him, man. And boy, was it a celebration! It was really cool to share that with my cousin too, man. And I feel like hunting with family is probably that's something unmatched. So
were you in a tree stand at the time?
Yes, sir. I sure was.
Gotcha. What was the weather like that day?
Oh, it was overcast, getting cold. It would have probably been rain had it been a little bit warmer, but we had a cold front that was moving through, and that's hands down the number one thing that I'm looking for. I could probably tell you the weather better than the weatherman during the season, and I'm always watching for those cold fronts, and I'll hunt certain spots, say a food source, when the cold front is moving in, say the day before, or right before it. I'm talking hours before it. During is always that's kind of one of them deals. It's not anything I would say is a great time to hunt, but then after as well, man, them cold fronts it's like a light switch that really, I guess, supercharges deer movement. As far as I'm concerned, that's when I do hunt, is around fronts.
Do you look at anything else besides fronts? Do you look at like barometric pressures or like moon phases, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. I got I got one of those moon guides, the wheels.
Yeah.
And I used to use it like crazy when I was a kid. I didn't really understand it before, but I mean, I'm the type of person, I don't know if you picked this up yet. I don't like to take someone's word for it. I want to know exactly why and how something does work. I did notice that maybe, say, I see more movement, so on and so forth, when I was using that moon guide as a kid. So I do use that, yes. And I also watch the barometric pressure as well. If you get it over 30, boy, things really get pretty crazy out there as far as the deer movement. And you know what? I don't necessarily think there's one thing that, triggers a deer to get up on his feet in daylight walk and, walk under your stand, other than maybe, say, a hot doe. But, I feel like it's when all those things, or a couple of those things, align to make for a great night to hunt. And I do watch all those things religiously. And, those are the nights. I mean, it's kind of funny. You said you found me on Facebook. I feel like, I've created somewhat of a following on there, and people have told me they watch to see when I'm hunting, and when I'm hunting, they will go hunt as well. Yeah,
makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, man, I do. I pay attention to all that stuff, and I do feel confident that it is, it should be, your secondary Bible, for at least for hunting.
Sure. What tools do you use to determine cold fronts and barometric pressures coming through?
Yeah, just weather apps. I also I've got Scout Look to, go through and see basically wind directions and what I might be able to expect. What is the name of I've got another app. It was actually, I was turned on to it by a buddy. And he had told me, Nathan Lee from Addiction Reloaded, he had sent me this app, and I was like, man, come on, you're really going to hunt off of, an app? Well, I'll tell you what, let me look it up real quick on my phone. It is really pretty cool.
Sure.
It is called Best Hunting. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but honestly, Best Hunting app it's pretty spot on. It does use all the factors that we were talking about. And now, mind you, obviously, I never, hunt off of because an app says it's going to be good or not be good. But I will tell you, I've noticed that it is pretty spot on. And the times that I would say is, where I want to hunt is usually it's telling you to hunt as well.
Gotcha. So you're looking at barometric pressure. You're looking at cold fronts before and after. You're looking at some moon phases, but maybe it doesn't sound like you put a whole lot of effort into that anymore. You're looking at your apps. You're looking at wind direction and where the wind's going to be blowing at a particular area.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, mostly the weather fronts.
Okay. Anything else you look at besides those big four?
Yeah. Jay, we were talking about trail cameras. I can tell you basically for the past 2 or 3 years in every single one of the spots that I've hunted, what date a specific buck has daylight walked. Deer have tendencies, whether he's a 5-year-old from the time he was a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. He might have been, one of the deer that had screwed up, say, the last week of October, and there's something that makes every deer tick. And honestly, if I could figure it out on every single one of them, I'd kill every one, but I don't. But what I do try to really key on is what they've done for years past. That's why I feel it's very important to keep, your camera pictures from years prior, is because, say a buck shows up that I'm like, all right, you know what, that's one that we really want to go after. I'll go through years prior and I'll say, all right, well, you know what, 2 years before, he was showing up on October 15th at 7:00 p.m. What made him do that? Well, you know what? A couple of days later, we got pictures of deer out in the food plot on rain, and I'll save my pictures knowing that I'll be looking at them later on because of that reason. So I will say, every one of those deer seem to do the same exact thing within a 7-day window, and you can really almost break it down to a 5-day window too, where say they did something I can't remember what the date was, October 17th. He showed up during the daylight for 2 days in a row at, in the evenings. Well, it was because there was a cold front moving through. Well, generally, if you pay attention to our weather, it almost does the same exact thing every single year in that 5 or 7 day window as well. So if you can correlate that deer that now is a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old that I want to kill did this in this week time span when the weather front's coming through, then you can say, all right, well, October 20th maybe is this year's when we have our cold front coming up too. Say it's October 15th. I'm sitting there looking at the weather, and I say, all right, well, October 20th is where we have this weather front. It looks like it's going to peak right about here. So I'm going to want to hunt the 19th and the 18th in the evenings, and that's where I feel like if you're capable of really breaking down, the intel that you've gathered, a lot of guys just, get their camera pictures, save the good ones, and, that's that. Well, I'm saving them all because they all mean so much. They really do. They all tell us a story, and every single one of them can help you to really put it together later on down the road.
Gotcha. Are you more of a morning hunter or evening hunter?
Evening.
Okay.
I guess early season, and I'm pretty adamant about that. I got a lot of people, I kill a good deer in the mornings, early season. Well, I agree, and it can be done, but what my issue is I don't know where those deer are when I'm walking in there in the dark. They're too unpredictable. They can literally be sitting right under your stand. You'd never know it, or they can be, on your trail walking in. And I feel confident, at least the deer I want and everybody wants, you don't have many chances to really alert those deer and let them know that they're being hunted before they're going to really change their pattern and, no longer daylight walk. A deer at nighttime, like I said, it don't really mean too much to me other than that he's just there. So, in the evening hunts, early season, I know that they are in a specific bedding area for the most part. Obviously deer do change their bedding here and there, but for the most part, they're going to be in, a specific bedding area. So if that's something that is known and that deer is there, you can get into your stand. Now, getting out is where I talk about, the entry and exits being, spot on or stellar. You got to be able to get out of there being undetected as well, because it's like I said, you don't have a whole lot of chances with those deer. And that's generally where, you'll see a lot of guys seem to hunt, say a field edge or something early season. They won't get back into the timber. And I'm pretty adamant about that, is I won't hunt the mornings and I won't hunt in heavy timber, until usually the last week of October, sometimes even November. It just kind of all depends on what the deer are doing, what kind of body language they're telling me, Does are still with fawns, I know it's a little bit of time before they're going to really get hot and heavy and bucks starting to really be on their feet a lot. You know what I mean? Gotcha.
Is that what you're looking at the end of October, early November? Is that kind of changeover when bucks may be on their feet looking for does?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Actually, I got a swamp that I hunt, and I've caught on to that. There's always fawns with does, and they will stay with those. The fawns will stay with those does generally up until like a few days before, or maybe a week before the rut starts kicking in. Not the rut, but the signs of the rut. Say bucks starting to chase does and daylight movement. So I'll always tell myself when and I'll put a camera out there and obviously when they start splitting up from the fawns from the does, I know that something is going to start happening here pretty soon. And then I'll start looking for that weather front. And that's when I'm really spending the time out there. I'll start sitting mornings. I'll sit midday sometimes. That particular place I'm talking about there isn't crazy pressure. Basically, I am the pressure there. I'm fortunate to, have sole rights to that property and surrounding, it's actually horse barns that, they don't allow anybody to hunt on those properties. So I am very fortunate on that specific property. But yeah, so, mornings and evenings are great in those spots there. And yeah, that's what I'm looking for though.
Gotcha. No, that's some fantastic tips. And sometimes, I think we get so eager to get out in the woods, but you kind of let your emotions overtake your brain, which
yes,
men have that problem frequently. But really, hunt smart is really the point here, I think, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody gets that itchy trigger finger, right? So one of the best things I've started to do is I'll try to keep one wood that maybe say is notorious for not having very good buck production. And you know, that's my woods. I'll go in and I'll if I got an itchy trigger finger, I'll try and shoot a doe there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You can go in there and do that kind of stuff, and then it doesn't mess anything up. You know, coming up the season, I screwed up last year actually, pretty bad. And this might be. I hope somebody can learn from this right here. Is I had everything textbook to harvest a specific buck that I wanted, and this year we're going to be on him. But last year I screwed up. He was in there, so I started pressing the tree stand set that I had, you know, set up for him. And I also had two old does that are old snooty does that are, you know, they will look up no matter what, and they know exactly. It doesn't matter if you move the tree stand or wherever, they're going to find you. Well, I have been trying to kill the one specific doe for years. I mean, she looks like a granny walking around. Her hips are all, you know, sunken in, and she's got a bad limp. I don't even know how she's not gotten eaten by a coyote, but you know, I thought that it was her last year that was walking in, and it was the second, you know, the second hitless doe. She was limping in. Now I don't know, it was getting close to the rut, and maybe she had been, you know, gotten runned or ran and you know, but she had a limp as well. Well, I took a shot on her, and she ran right into the, you know, heavy bedding area. We ended up going in there after dark, and I know for a fact that we booted, you know, the hitless buck that we were in there for, and also any other bucks that were living in there at that point in time. And it definitely ruined that area. I my time choosing, you know, I guess I felt that was an opportunity to get rid of one of those snooty does, and it wasn't. Now that's you know, that was just one specific time that happened to me. I don't know. You know, I hear a lot of guys, oh, I shot a doe and a buck come running up her trail and I shot him. You know, well, I'm not going to tell anybody that doesn't work that way. But you know, it definitely got me last year and made for actually one of my toughest seasons I've had.
Gotcha. All right. Well, it seems like there are always lessons to learn in the woods, no matter who you are.
Sir.
And it's nice when we can share those mistakes with others, so others won't make those same mistakes and kind of hone in on some of the reasons you're there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the hang-on helper.
Hang-on helper. Well, basically, hang-on helper is something that I think I told you, man. I'm the type that always looks at something and I want it to be better than what it is, or you know, if there's an issue with how I'm doing something and it causes me stress or causes me hurt, or you know, it makes something more strenuous, I'll say, well, you know what, there's got to be a better way. And you know what, honestly, most times there are. Well, I had almost fallen out of a tree while trying to hang a tree stand. And I said, you know what, man, this is just stupid. I actually, that same tree stand was a brand new, I don't even know it. It was probably, I can't tell you what model it was. I don't remember, but it was maybe a $60, $70 tree stand. And, you know, going through, it was actually high school or right after high school. You know, I didn't have that kind of money to be, you know, wasting stands and you know, dropping them 25 foot and bending them all to heck. And so I did. I dropped that stand and basically ruined it. Well, I said, you know what, this next time I'm going to go out there and maybe I'll screw a tree step or something in and try that. Well, I did, and it helped, but it just didn't seem like, you know, when I went to go, say, put the strap around it, it was flailing all over the place. And I said, well, you know what, man, I bet you I could make some sort of a receiver or something that could go onto a tree stand. And, you know, so I did. I basically made the plate to the hang-on helper, and then I got even more in depth and decided, well, I'm going to put a special, you know, kind of receiver on the tree now. And it was all inspired, I guess, by a screw-in tree step. Now, you know, what we've kind of developed it into is I feel pretty confident in saying this as well. I believe we have the strongest threads on the market as far as for screwing into a tree, any kind of tree that you put it up to. They are extremely sharp, and they do, they do exactly what we need them to. And now when you're up there with a tree stand on your shoulder, you don't have time to mess around with something not screwing in well. So that was one of my biggest things. I searched for what I felt and, wanted to go with was the strongest thread on the market. And it's kind of how it came about. It went through a lot of different changes. I mean, there's probably been 5 or 6 different prototypes that I've made and used. And honestly, they're still on some of my older stands, and we do use them. But, what we've also found with our testing is we have properties where there's, say, people that we don't trust. You never know what, unfortunately, hunters, you hope that they're going to be honest and not take your trail cameras or take your tree stands or anything of that sort, but they don't. So, what I'll do is I'll go up, put in tree steps or, ladder sticks or whatever. And I'll put the receiver, the screw-in implement into a tree, and then I'll just hang my tree stand the day that I hunt. And if I'm going to be there hunting for a couple of days, I'll leave it out, pull it back down when I get down. It's that simple to where, it's not a pain in the butt, and I don't make any noise doing it. So I feel like that's kind of been another thing that does help me to be effective is, say, different winds. Well, not everybody has enough money to have tree stands sitting all over the woods for different times of the year when, say they're on an acorn flat, there's a bean field over the other place or, 100 yards away, but, I can't put 2 tree stands out there. And, I know there's a lot of people in that same boat. With us, we always have cameramen. Well, for you to have 2 stands sitting just, let's say one woods, for example, 100 acres, you might want to have 3 or 4 sets on that. Well, that's 8 stands for me. That's expensive. Right. So,
right.
I always have the hang-on helper on my stands, and they're always the cheap stands. I don't have the money to spend a whole bunch of money on a really big, expensive stand. Those cheap ones work just as well. And, so it fits basically every tree stand on the market. I'll throw it on one of them cheaper stands and go in, hang it up when I'm going in to hunt that day, and I'll, pull it down that night or whatever. If it's one that I want to leave up, I'll leave it up. But, another thing that I guess would be very beneficial and I probably won't really market this, but we've also found that if your straps fail, you're not falling to your death or to broken knees or broken back or anything like that. It's actually engineered for 2 guys, 2 full-grown men. I obviously, one day I'd love nothing more than for it to be something that, somebody calls me and says, what, Dan, thank you so much for creating this product. It truly did save my life. And I'll tell you now, not just from hanging tree stands, there's a lot of deaths every year hanging tree stands. I know that it's going to cut down on the possibility of that happening, but also if we can, somebody's strap fails, a squirrel maybe ate their strap or sun rot, whatever, will have a hang-on helper on it. They're not going to be falling if that strap does fail.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like you have a pretty good device there. How would we look into buying one if we were interested in researching that more?
Well, www.hangonhelper.com is where you can find the information on them. We actually, when we, obviously I'm no big money man. I don't got deep pockets. I started making these things all by myself, and I brought a buddy in as a partner, and he started helping me, so we started getting a little bit better with our production, and was able to handle a little more. Well, when we went public with it, instead of, say, selling to just friends and family and stuff like that, just local, we actually sold out in 2 weeks, and it was very attractive to consumers. So I didn't have any time to be building, the amount that I guess there's no way that I could keep up with the orders. So we had to outsource, and we have a very, very big order coming in here. It's actually hoping to get it next week. So they will be available for purchase. We're hoping next week, possibly the week after. We might take some pre-orders. We got to get everything packaged and so on and so forth, because they're all made here in the U.S. and that's something I want to keep, is because I'm not real big with the overseas market stuff. That's something I am American. I feel like I need to support American work, and so we're going to be putting some people to work with our product, and
nice.
Should be a good thing, man.
Gotcha. So we'll be able to buy some more of these products here pretty soon?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. And tell us about Tuned In Archery. That's your archery shop, and the Tinemen. It sounds like it should be a rock and roll group of some sort from the 60s.
We do rock and roll a little bit, man.
Yeah, you do. Of course you do.
Yeah, no doubt. We, Tuned In Archery, is a bow shop that I started. And like I told you before, I started working on bows and tuning bows, friends and family, so on and so forth. And it turned into where I was doing all my friends' bows and their friends' bows. And I said, well, you know what, I probably should make this a legit business. So I did. I started Tuned In Archery. Well, then I said, all right, well, people are kind of following me. And I actually started a Facebook page and had a website, and I started getting people following me for the hunting, because I kind of was mixing the two together. And I found that, maybe people are really liking to, listen to what I'm saying about the hunting, or watch, see the photos and the video and stuff like that. So I said, well, let's start a group that basically is a, marketing group for Tuned In Archery. Well, that's where Tinemen was formed. And, we've done a couple different TV shows now. We're doing really well online. Everybody seems to really love the show, and we're probably we are going to be running an ad for Carbon TV here pretty soon. We're going to try and do some Carbon TV and possibly do some networks next year. So things with Tinemen is just really snowballed, man. We Instagram, Facebook. I mean, social media is such a powerful tool nowadays, and it can grow so fast. I mean, everything, like you said, is right at your fingertips, and you're able to maybe hear what somebody has to say, or watch what they're trying to do. And I feel like that's really where we have gotten the majority of our followers and friends, family, and everybody watches there. And so yeah, that's how Tinemen came about.
Nice. Tuned In Archery and the Tinemen. I love it. Very nice.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. All right, I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you, Dan, and I didn't prep you for this, so I hope you're ready.
All right.
All right, you ready? Okay, here we go.
Yes, sir.
All right, what's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Wind.
Okay. We all have these things that we don't feel that we can hunt without. Maybe it's a good luck charm. Maybe it's an actual device that we need, aside from your firearm or weapon. What's that one thing for you that you can't leave in the truck or at home? Otherwise, it drives you crazy.
I have a T-shirt that is Winning for Wilson. Wilson is what it's called. And it was a young buddy who he started following me on Facebook. His father and mother, kind of turned me on to knowing who Wilson was. He had cancer, and he had passed away. And I feel like I wear that T-shirt underneath of all my camos, no matter how warm or how cold it is. And that is one thing that, I'm not a superstitious person, but I do feel more that, he's somewhat with me and kind of helping look over me as my angel. And that's one thing I will not leave the truck or the house without.
Gotcha. Okay. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve? Oh boy, noise. When cameraman, or if I am the cameraman and the other, somebody's hunting, if somebody's just being extremely noisy, moving around, flailing their arms, that's one of my pet peeves, man. I can't stand that.
That's a good one. Okay, how old are you today, Dan?
I am 29 years old. I'll be 30, actually a week from today.
Okay. All right. So you'll be 30. What would you tell the 15-year-old Dan Basas, knowing what you know today?
Stay the course and never give up. I feel wholeheartedly that I've had that in my mind for a lot of years now. don't be so scared, I guess, would be another thing. Don't be nervous. Everything is always going to work its way out. God has a plan for us, and he has a plan for me. And young Dan at 15, he has a plan for you too.
All right. Very good. All right. You're at a hunting convention and you're in the hotel lobby and a stranger comes up to you and asks what you do for a living. What do you tell him?
Oh gosh. That's a tough question for me. I never know whether to tell people, I own a bow shop. I actually, up until a couple of weeks ago, I was also an electrician. I mean, I didn't really sleep much either. But I guess today I would have to tell somebody I own a bow shop. I'm an inventor. I do video production, photography, and when I do tell people that, they kind of look at me like, "What the heck? What do you do?" Crazy.
That's funny. What did you have for breakfast today?
I didn't eat breakfast, actually. I didn't eat until 12:30 because I woke up, started doing work, and I actually had to go get some stuff settled at the bank.
Gotcha. All right. You can have your own billboard on a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything that you want on it. What would it say?
Stay tuned in.
I like that. Very clever. Mm-hmm. All right. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
I'll tell you what, man, I guess a man by the name of Mike Palumbo, he is a guy that was one of my mentors, and he had hired me I used to be a millwright, welder, fabricator. I fixed big machines. I took his daughter to prom in high school, and he took a real liking to me because I hunted. And, he actually had offered me a job. He was my manager at a mill, and I had worked for him. Well, we had both lost our jobs, and we both were rock bottom. It was scary, but he started his own company, and it was crazy to see, as scared as I was the entire time with it, and helping him, to try and help get that business going. He never lost his faith and knowing that, everything was going to be okay. A guy that is extremely bright and a lot of life lessons, and he now owns a couple different companies that are very successful, and he's never lost sight of what's most important, and he'll do anything for anybody. And I guess that's kind of, what I want to be is where you never lose hope, and always remember everybody and do kind things for people.
That's awesome, man. Very nice. All right. What's a day in the life of Dan Basas look like?
Oh gosh, grind. Wake up, get moving right away. It actually has slowed down a lot. Like I told you, I just made a transition from being an electrician, for 8 hours a day, and then basically working the bow shop stuff and hang on helper stuff and video in the evenings and weekends. I was literally, I'd wake up 5 o'clock in the morning, go to work, or, do all my ordering for the day from orders that had came in the evening before. And then I would go to work, and as soon as I get done with work, I'd usually have a customer come into the shop to either, work on his bow, drop his bow off, pick it up, so on and so forth. And, then after that, usually took me to about 8, 9 o'clock. I'd want to sit down and try and get some stuff done as far as video goes or something of that sort. And, there's always something needs done. But that was probably me a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Now I am 100% full-time doing stuff that is benefiting myself and my family solely. I feel confident in saying this. I've always had an issue with working hard for somebody else, and I always have worked my tail off for everybody else. I've made a heck of a reputation for being a hard worker, and but I always knew in the back of my mind that I'm working towards someone else's dream. I'm not working toward my dream. I'm working towards my boss's dream, and I feel very, very good about waking up in the morning and knowing, hey, you know what, I'm going to work for you. I'm going to work for my family, and I'm working toward my dream now.
Gotcha. All right. And finally, what's a deer hunting day in the life of yours look like? Which has to be different than the regular day in the life, right?
Yeah, definitely, man. I the night before, generally, I'll be I'll be going over my plan again over and over and over. I do get very amped up and ready because I know that day is coming where, the stars could align and, say the weather front's lining up, the moon phase is perfect, the pressure system is moving in, and we got rain coming, a cold front. Well, the following morning, boy, I don't need any alarm clock. I don't need any coffee, anything like that. I'm ready to go, and I feel like I turn into like a game time. I know it's time to go, and I'm in the zone, man.
That's awesome. So cool.
Yeah.
Dan, this is, we've gone over our hour, and it seems like we've been talking to each other for about 5 minutes. It's unbelievable. You brought some great tips to the show. Our listeners are going to chew this up and just devour it because you're honest and I love your candor. You just kind of tell the truth, and that's what I like about you. And you're just kind of one of those guys. It's hardcore, and you just like to bring it, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate hearing that, buddy. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. And come back anytime and tell us more stories, because I don't feel like we even touched on the surface of everything you know. There's more in your brain than that I need to extract, and I would appreciate a return visit at some point down the road.
I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
I thoroughly enjoyed talking to Dan. I know I did that one solo, Dusty, but you're able to listen to the contents of the show, and I think you were as impressed with Dan listening to him talk about how he approaches his setup as I was when I first interviewed him. Anywhere from hunting the wind to hunting when the barometric pressure is right to doing a hyper focus and long shots on his and going through his archery shooting checklist. It's just a priceless interview with somebody that really knows what he's doing, and that's what we like to do each and every week.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. And it always makes it nice to listen to a blue-collar hunter and pass on some more knowledge that maybe somebody that's listening didn't have in their setup.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, Dan is pretty humble, but he's very, very sharp when it comes to the hunt. But you're right; he's a blue collar guy, just getting it done, and that's we pay attention to those guys. So very, very cool. Thanks to Dan for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. And Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
No, we do, Jay. I'm going to touch bases on ground blinds.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
It's a great option to get out of the elements of the weather, and it's sometimes they're just not a tree where you want to be hunting at. And if you're going to set up a ground blind, get that thing in the woods. Give them a chance to adjust to it. It's going to be a foreign object. They say, oh, you brush it in, and I'm not going to say you can't get lucky and go set up a ground blind, brush it in good, and that night kill the buck or a doe or whatever you're hunting. But just 9 out of 10 times they're going to come out and maybe spook a little bit when they see that ground blind, or maybe a little bit of scent that you've left in there, or just something that's not going to be right to either visually or to their taste buds or their nose. Or just give that ground blind time to season in that spot. If you're planning on hunting it pretty heavy, get it out there, get it set up, and let it become part of the element that they're used to.
Very nice. It's you notice when you open up a package of anything, no matter what it is. I hate that plastic packaging that everything comes in now. You basically have to take out your knife and you have to cut that through layers of plastic just to get to the item that you first ordered. Drives me nuts. But once you get in there, everything smells like a factory. It's all the synthetic stuff that was used during manufacturing. And guaranteed deer smell that. So I'm with you, man. Just you got to get that kind of seasoned up to match the outdoors.
Yeah, no doubt. It just gives it opportunity to get the deer comfortable, walking in front of it or passing by it or being around it, whatever the scenario may be. Just if you let it season for a couple weeks before you hunt it,
right?
It makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and I think it's seasoned in a couple different ways. Like I left my blind out all spring and all summer, and not in the place where I was hunting, but I just want to get all the smells out. And then I think you're right. Having it placed in a spot for a couple of weeks so the deer get used to it is just smart. Just good move.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So great tip. Thanks to ScentLock Enforcer for sponsoring the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. Thanks to Jim Morse over at Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. And thanks to Jim Snow for sponsoring the show with his Euro hanger. Dusty, this has been a fantastic show. And unfortunately, it's time for us to go. But where can we find you when you're not hanging out here with me in Big Buck Studios?
Shoot me an email. Dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. I try to respond to all the emails, and if you got any questions or you want a topic that we need to cover on the show, feel free to shoot me an email. Dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Facebook, facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors, and also hit me up on Instagram @ChasingAntler. Jay, where can people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, the best place to reach me is by email, and that's jay@bigbuckregistry.com. You can always check out our Big Buck Registry contingent over on Facebook. We're approaching 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, and that's bigbuckregistry.com/Facebook. We're also on all the major social media avenues, anywhere from Instagram to Twitter. Just do a search for Big Buck Registry or go bigbuckregistry.com/whatever the social media is. So /Twitter, /Instagram, /YouTube, /Google. It's all right there. We have an app if you'd like to download the shows and just have it on your phone, your iPhone. It's bigbuckregistry.com/app. And we also have an app for Android, which is bigbuckregistry.com/G-app. You can become a patron of the show if you'd like to. And if you go to bigbuckregistry.com/donate, and we have different levels of rewards there for you, and based off of how much you pledge to the show, and we always could use your help. Also, if you'd like to be featured on our Wall of Fame on our Facebook page, and you shot a deer recently or even in the past, it doesn't really matter. All we need is the hunter's first name, a picture of you with the buck, and the year of kill and the state of kill, and we'll review it. And if it goes up, if it passes the test, we'll let you know, and that it will be featured on our Wall of Fame. And Dusty, I think that's it. It's been another great show, and let's do it again next week.
I look forward to it, Jay, and really, truly appreciate everybody downloading, commenting, liking, everything. And man, what another great show, Jay. Glad to be part of it, man.
Likewise. Just can't wait to do it again. I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.